welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today, as promised, I'm going to be telling you all about the experience day that I got Jamie for Christmas, because I think it might be something that's of interest to some of you guys, and you might be considering or looking for presents in the future. So I guess a good place to start is how I even found out about this. As I've mentioned on a few podcasts now, I've done some work for an app called Cars with Character, which is an app designed to add to your experience of enjoying your classic car. So there's lots of little different things that you can do with it. You can use something called the Enthusiast Atlas to find lots of little local spots when you're away with your classic car and you don't know the area that well, that you might want to go and check out. And then I've been doing primarily work with them on creating some scenic tours. And one of the first scenic tours that I did for them starts off kind of towards Stamford, does a really nice loop round through kind of Northamptonshire and Rutland, and then finishes up in Stamford. And as you go up through Rockingham on the route, you pass something that I saw called like the Land Rover Experience, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. And I looked into it, and it was basically, as you might expect, the opportunity to experience Land Rovers in their natural habitat. And that there's loads of them around the country, these Land Rover experiences that are done with like under actual JLR, and this one was reasonably close to us, and you have the opportunity to try out brand new Discoveries, Defenders or Range Rovers, and you get an instructor kind of telling you how to do all the bits and pieces, and you get to experience doing some off-roading with said vehicle. And you got the option for kind of like 1 hour sessions, half-day sessions, which are 3 hours, or something even longer. You can mix and match like which vehicles you go out in. And yeah, it just looked really interesting. And when Jamie was like looking into vehicles and stuff that he might be interested in getting, way back before we got even the Spitfire, something like a Defender was something that he'd thought about. He's always really enjoyed the way that they look and how cool and rugged they are and their capabilities and stuff. But hats off to people who go out on the regular on long distance journeys in old Land Rovers. But they are, from what I can tell, an awful lot of work, really noisy, and not necessarily suitable for dailying in the way that we daily our vehicles. Like if you were in certain parts of the country or had a very rural commute, it might be great, but for what he was looking for, it didn't necessarily work. So it ended up being that to get, and also they're so expensive, to get one that was going to be usable and enjoyable and not super in need of lots of work, they was going to be an awful lot more money than he was kind of budgeting for his first classic at the time. And so it went by the wayside, but he's always enjoyed the idea of these big 4x4s and something like that. So I guess when I'd gone out and done the route, because I do the route once to test it out, to get to know the area, to check all the points flow nicely and find out any extra information that I might want to include in the write-up, and take photos of the car at lots of places. And then I would go around again and test the route through the app once it had been put in, and film the route for the app. And so once I'd done those 2 runs, it had kind of been clocked in the back of my mind as that might be something that's really cool to do and interesting. And when I was thinking about what Jamie might want for Christmas this year, I realised that he might enjoy having a bit of a day out that was all about things that he really enjoys. So first off, the big thing that Jamie enjoys is food, particularly breakfast food. So knowing where it was and kind of the direction that we'd be heading, it wasn't going to be massively out of the way to start our day at Brightside at Ramjam. It's somewhere that's obviously quickly become one of our favourite little spots, and they do great food and it's really cool inside, and Jaffa always looks really cool parked outside. So I started off the day and his gift with a reservation there. It didn't really need one, but I needed something to be able to like put in the card essentially to say, look, we're going to start the day here and then we're going to go here. So started the day off there and then going on via some of the scenic roads that I'd got to know through Cars with Characters route to the Land Rover experience. That was the plan for the day. So I'd booked the experience. You can do it two ways. You can either buy a gift voucher and then they pick exactly what they want to do. But I knew that if we booked a gift voucher, we'd keep kicking it down the way. We wouldn't necessarily have the time to book it between Christmas and New Year's, so it'd end up getting kind of pushed back, and we might never actually get round to doing it. So I went for the option of let's just book the day, and I'm glad that I did, because the day that we went was incredibly busy. I think they primarily do it on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and so doing it on a Tuesday in between Christmas and New Year's was clearly very popular, because we went on 30th of December, and after I'd booked it all I actually got a phone call from them saying the system's obviously been really busy today and we've ended up with a double booking at the time slot that you've gone for. Are we okay to push you back a little bit later? And didn't really make too much of a difference to us, and actually it ended up that the lighting and stuff was really cool at the time that we ended up going, so a secret bonus there, I guess. You do have to fill out like a waiver kind of thing and get one of your driver codes to send over to them so that they can check that you've got a license and that you're as good at driving as you say you are. And so after Jamie had received the gift on Christmas Day, we did all of that, got it all sorted out and ready, so that on the day we had nothing really to worry about. So we got up, drove out on much the same route I'm doing at the moment, out the Parkway in Peterborough, up the A1 in Jaffa the Scimitar. He hadn't really been out since before Christmas, I think, the Scimitar, so it was quite nice to get out in him, and it had been a while since we'd both been out in him as well, so that was really nice. And like I said, Jaffa looks really cool outside Brightside because of his orange colours, and his little air freshener is a Brightside air freshener as well, because it really matches with the colour toning of the car. We had a really lovely breakfast, and because we'd been kind of pushed back to a later slot, we were able to have a second lot of drinks there. I always love getting their chai lattes, and I really like the mugs that they have them in there as well, so that was pretty good. And then we headed towards Rotland Water, and that's a stop that is on the route, so I was able to then plot from there how we were going to do some of the route backwards and then the other way round kind of thing, so adapt the route really to what we were doing for the day. So they are really quite flexible routes. And we started off at the Normanton Church stop, which I'd actually been at maybe like a week or so before Christmas, getting a nice picture of Peggy there because I was in the area. So it was nice to park up. We wandered actually out towards the church there, which is really cool. It was a full height church, I believe, before they flooded the area of Rutland that became Rutland Water. And so they then put in a new floor, and you essentially have a church that is now just in the roof of the original church, which is pretty interesting. And it makes for a lovely viewpoint of Rutland Water. So we walked out to there, walked back towards the cars and stuff, had a little bit of an extra small kind of walk round there, got ourselves another hot drink in the cafe there before we did the route that's kind of backwards from that point to Rockingham. So we were able to go via the Welland Viaduct and get some really nice photos there before we arrived at the Land Rover experience. They were really lovely and welcoming. We got a hot drink and offered a mince pie whilst we waited for our instructor to come in from their previous route, and then got introduced to our instructor. His name was Parky, and there was about maybe 4 or 5 of us all going out at the same sort of time. I think they've got 6 Defenders and then 1 or 2 Range Rovers and Discoveries, because as Parky said, it does tend to be the Land Rovers that get booked for these 1-hour experiences, because it's kind of that thing that they're most well known for, that people are looking for, and quite an iconic image for Land Rover. And then the other stuff tends to be booked by people who have recently bought a Discovery or a Range Rover or a Defender potentially, and are looking to learn a bit more about what all the technology does and how it all works. So you can, if you've bought a Land Rover from either a dealership or an approved dealer, either new or second hand, you get one of these experiences, the 3-hour versions, for free from Jaguar Land Rover, to explain like how to use all of the things that the Defender or the Range Rover or the Discovery has, which is pretty cool. And I can imagine that would be so overwhelming, because even not driving as a passenger in the back for an hour, there was so much going on and so much like being explained to us, that I think at the end of 3 hours you'd be absolutely have your mind blown. Now, some of our mind blowing possibly came from the fact that I'm coming from driving on the regular and Morris Minor and occasionally a Kia Picanto, which, you know, doesn't have a huge amount of technology in it. And obviously Jamie's much the same in the fact that yes, the Scimitar's got more dials and things like that, but certainly not a big screen in it that you click onto to do loads of different stuff. So it was a really interesting thing to observe, or for Jamie to do, compared to what we're used to. Got shown up to the Defender. I was able to sit in the back for the experience, and Jamie, to start with, was in the passenger seat as Parky drove us to the kind of area that they work on. It is right next to Rockingham Castle, if you know where that is, and the actual routes take place on the Rockingham Castle grounds. So, as Parky explained to us, they are working with the reputation of JLR, the reputation of Rockingham Castle, all of like the environment agencies and heritage agencies that are involved with the land that they are working on, and so they have to be really careful about being on top of making sure that people are only driving where they're supposed to, that they're being kind of respectful of the landscape, and the way that they are doing these 4x4 experience days fits into all of those expectations. So it is quite interesting in that regard as well. Once we got to the Rockingham Castle Estate, they obviously swapped seats, and Jamie was given kind of the basic instructions to start with. And to begin with, you are off-roading on just essentially a dirt track, so you have this gradual build-up to much more tricky situations as you get used to an unfamiliar car, so that's really good. And you go kind of along this little dirt track, and then you get to this little area where there's a load of hills and dips and kind of difficult turns, and obviously in this time of year some of that stuff has huge great puddles of water in it, and I guess today potentially some of it could be really quite icy. It wasn't for us because it was a little bit warmer on that day than it is today, but definitely something that was probably something to consider when you book it. I would say that actually this sort of experience day is going to be better and more muddy and more interesting and more thrilling in autumn, winter and early spring. So it works really well as a Christmas present, and it wasn't something that I'd really had a lot of thought about, but it did cross my mind as we were going through these absolutely ginormous bowls of muddy water, that perhaps in the summer some of that wouldn't be there, and so there'd be different challenges. But we had all sorts of things explained to us, like all the different settings, how you go about changing them, and then the setting for kind of descending a really steep bit of muddy track, and how you basically steer and the car does everything for you. So really fascinating, and how you could like see on the screen where it was turning the brakes on and off on all of the four wheels, and you could then like feel that even as a passenger within the car. It was really interesting. So you do that bit, and then you kind of move round onto the next bit, which is a bit more kind of swampy, and you're in like woodland and trees, and there's this huge like bit of water that you have to go through. And so there's a discussion about the like safety of going through water, what you have to check for, and there was actually kind of a few of us all kind of waiting to go through, so I was able to get this really cool photo of like the car behind going through as we started to come out, and that was probably my favourite area of it. But we were there for an hour and it went so quickly, but also felt like we did so much. Like there was loads of different bits that we went over, loads of different kind of angles that we were dangling from, because we were going like sideways over bowls of water, and yeah, just really interesting and a completely different experience. And I think when a lot of people think about buying somebody who's into their cars a experience day or whatever, they think of track days or drift days or things like that. But actually, even for people who are into their classic cars, finding out about kind of how things have evolved, the technology that's involved, and really getting to like do a completely different challenge, I think is something that might be of interest to a few people, and not necessarily something that people always think of first when they're thinking of gifts and stuff. But yeah, we had an amazing time, and I got so much cool footage and photos, and you could really tell that Jamie was enjoying himself, so that was fantastic. And then we headed back to their little building, and they had like a little gift shop there, and so Jamie got a hat to remember his experience, but whilst it was a Land Rover hat, had Jaffa orange on it, so it worked really well. And having been out for the day, been on an adventure, we decided it was probably time for tea. And so whilst I'd only actually promised Jamie breakfast in this day, we ended up going back to Brightside and having their 2-for-1 Tuesday pizzas, which was pretty good. So I think we tripled the amount of times that we've been to Brightside together in one day with this little adventure. But yeah, we had a really fantastic time. The people there were really friendly. The instructors were funny but also really informative, really chatty, made you feel quite at ease. I highly recommend Parky as an instructor. He gave us lots of information, and the experience was great. And for the cost of Jamie Close Your Ears, £130 for the experience. Compared to some track day stuff, it is really quite affordable, and you get to have a really cool adventure and explore of a part of Rockingham Castle that you probably wouldn't go to otherwise, and also explore of a vehicle that you probably wouldn't get to do otherwise. There is no way that in our immediate future, or the foreseeable really, we are buying a brand new Defender or really a brand new anything. So to get to see how a brand new car works and all of these things, and how it has the capabilities to do so many things, is really cool. And also to find out that these cars are so in depth and technical and stuff like that, that you can buy a car and then get sent on a 3-hour course to learn about that car, was also something that seems totally crazy. But to bring it back to classic cars, maybe this is something that the vintage car clubs could be offering, in that if you buy a vintage car and you're not fully familiar with everything about that sort of car and that sort of era, you reach out to the club and say, can I have a starter session with someone who can teach me about the ins and outs of these cars, and just give me that little bit of reassurance and comfort in using it more regularly, getting out there and enjoying it. And I think that could open up the interest in those early cars as much as it opens up the interest for people buying these brand new cars. Properly fascinating day out, and I think Jamie really enjoyed it. Food, bit of mud, 4x4s. I don't think there was anything he wasn't going to love. So yeah, if you are interested, if you look up Land Rover Experiences, you can find all of the centres that exist around the country where you can go and do this. And we did it at the East of England area experience and really loved it. So well worth looking into if you're looking for something like that. So something a little bit different today. I hope you've still enjoyed hearing it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about these kind of crash courses that car clubs could offer to get people to feel more comfortable in the more unusual or slightly nerve-wracking cars. In the meantime, thank you ever so much for listening. Drive safely and happy motoring.